cute.
Is this still 20?
Still 20, correct. A little above 20, it's a 1.6, so it's closer to a 35, I guess. But I just wanted to make sure we're in focus. So I'm just going to capture that for reference. Then we will escape. And then we're going to change 60.
Yes.
So what that does is that, well, mag, it lets me find my sample. I grabbed a quick reference, so in case I accidentally hit live before I move on, it's fine. But now I can use this to get back to where I was. So then all I have to do is right click, move to center, unescape, and we should be roughly there. Right, there we go. Let's go back to our max field view. 60x, we get the whole thing in view still. All right, and so then my first step, yeah, we've got reds or orange across the board. Okay. Let's go ahead and run an auto signal and just see what we get.
So should I turn off red and solid?
What channels are on here?
Only blue, Dappy, and Jeffrey.
So just those two.
Yes.
Okay. Much better. Okay.
And then it's supposed to be nuclei. The green is overlap with nuclei.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean it's.
recently I have an issue to. I was hoping to see more. This is so many, but I have an issue to increase that.
Yeah, it does to me. It does look like it's kind of struggling with picking some of these things apart. And again, this, like you said, it's poor staining, so it could just be the staining on this. Because we're jacked up to like 90 on the gain, which is a lot.
So Dappy also, you were saying Dappy is...
Dappy does not look, I mean, this is Dappy right here, right? So I can see what looks like some nuclei.
Is that because is that because it's not a flat?
I mean, it just doesn't look well stained to me. I don't know what kind of dilution of Dappy you're using, but you might be able to go higher.
Pretty
Only
high.
the depth channel.
What's that?
Only the depth channel. Can I just say what the marks do?
Yep, this is the Dappy channel. Because it looks to me like there's some autofluorescence. You can see some of these spots are trying to peek out, but it's everything's in the noise floor. So if I go ahead and run a denoise, you can see things pop a little better, but because the signal's noise is so low to begin with, so I mean, the only way to compensate for that would be to push up the laser. Maybe push the gain. We gotta use a lot of gain. So ways to compensate for this, you could theoretically switch to the Galvo and just dwell forever, but you're gonna do more damage. You could push the laser up more, but you're gonna do more damage. You could push the gain up more, but you're gonna get more noise. So you have to kind of stop and make a decision. How thin, how small are the structures you're trying to find and see? Because another thing you could do is we could go up to a 2.0 pinhole, right? And now if I go live, this should be brighter in all channels, right? But
Or I can also delete that, like this kind of, always like a JP color. I see some non-specific.
non-specific?
This is probably the
Bright spot.
actual signal, but
Oh, really?
this is the one.
These right here,
is not the one I'm hoping.
these spots.
This is not specific.
Do you spin down your antibody before you stain?
Second row is
Yeah, spin down on all. Yeah, that's what. I don't know your protocols, but like when we did it, we would always do some high salt PBS washes as well to knock off. So the idea is that you want to knock. These are probably, if they're non-specific, if there really isn't anything there, they are high avidity. No, they're highly sticky, but not specific. My brain is breaking on which one is affinity and avidity.
It's maybe second antibody.
Or primary.
Primary.
Depends. Is your primary monoclonal or polyclonal?
This is rabbit.
Your primary though. So your
Yeah.
primary is rabbit.
Poly
If
or
it-
mono, I hope.
If it's raised, is it raised in rabbit or is it like cultured in
Raised
out of water?
in rabbit.
Probably polyclonal then. Because the only way you get monoclonals is taking cells and it's yeah.
Yeah, but there is a. Oh, I see. But there is the rabbit monoclonal antibody too.
You can make one like we do from screen from rabbit.
Yeah. So polyclonals will always have an array of non-specific samples. One technique actually that we use sometimes in our lab was putting your antibody on, incubating it, your primary, taking it off again, actually pulling that aliquot off, keeping it, washing it with like the high salt washes, knock off anything that was non-specific but sticky, and then because it tends to outcompete your sample of interest, your antibody of interest, and then putting the aliquot you took off back on for another
So
incubation.
high salt, how much salt?
So high salt for us, and again, tissue. My background is
Yeah,
tissue.
okay.
So we would do 3 PBS washes before each antibody stain. 2 of them were high salt. It was it's been a while.
0.5 more ounces.
I can't remember the molar. I did it so frequently. I just thought in grams of. I think it was like 32 grams of salt per liter of PBS, if my memory is serving me correctly.
Could you say
32, I think. Again,
32?
10.
Well,
It's been
it
10
is,
years since
yeah.
I've been in the lab.
NaCl.
Hmm?
NaCl. I think.
NaCl. Yeah,
the
sodium
two-
chloride. I believe it was 32 grams or 16 grams of sodium chloride. I would have to go back and find my digital lab notebook because I did keep some of those protocols.
So before primary antibody.
Yeah, so what we would do is 2 high salt, 1 regular PBS, right? So 2 of the high salt PBS, 1 regular salt PBS. Again, this is 10-year-old protocols.
It works.
So but I don't know what the literature is at like these days because I don't actively stain. But that's what we do, and it would help knock off excess antibodies. Because the other problem you're going to run into here, I don't know anything, again, without knowing anything about your organoids, is how is your antibody penetrating into these organoids?
How thick is those? I don't know.
Is that I'm following the stem cell technologies organoid staining protocol, which is because this is 3D. It's about 1 hour. It's containing Triton.
Okay, so like Triton, yep.
And also Twin.
Yeah. Okay. So, because that's the other concern you have too, is getting getting things in between the cells, into the cells, right? Because depending on where your stuff is, you've got a blob. The outside's going to stain easier than the inside. So that would be a concern. Like maybe if you always see a lot of this excess on the borders, it's just because these borders sit and see antibody at higher concentrations than the inside.
So it is after fixation, like familiarization affects cell. Like,
Yes, yeah. Well, because again, it's not like there's no space. Like there's not channels in here, just open spaces that the cells have left for your stuff to permeabilize in, right? And then when you think about it, when you're doing like a formaldehyde fixation, you're cross-linking the hell out of structures in that cell. And if you're doing more like a PLP formaldehyde step, like with extra lysine and pyridate and things like that, you're cross-linking all sorts of stuff. You're making it harder for the sample to get in there, for the antibodies to get in there.
What I want to ask was, for example, the general protocol, more 2D cells, it's like permeabilization is just limit 10 minutes. Or
Right.
some months.
Yeah, because you're just trying to get it into the cell membranes
So
and
if
into the cell.
it's longer, it's not good.
Well, I mean, the longer your antibody sits on the sample, the more chance things, especially if it's a polyclonal antibody, the more chance you have for things to stick where it's long.
So permeabilization time affect. So if it's longer,
The
Is that-
permeabilization, yeah, because you can do damage to your sample, I think, with them to a certain extent. But you'd have to test in play, because again, I didn't do organoids, I did tissue. So we didn't do a lot of tween, we did a lot of SDS, and that was just because our samples were already kind of opened from being cryosection, right? So we had a lot of surface area compared to the area that we were working on. So we would use SDS to open up the epitopes and increase our binding efficiency that way as well. There's a lot of moving parts here because you could do, permeabilization is one factor, epitope presentation is another factor, right? Because proteins are 3D structures, they don't necessarily show that epitope that you want. So we would do like SDS. Sometimes, occasionally, we would do Triton or tween. Those were, yeah. But then we would also do like microwave steps and things like that. I don't know. You would need to go look at the literature for organoids. I don't have any specific.
but if
Training and
normal
organoids.
like a tissue or 2D cells, so if after PFA put like a fixation, so if some protocols are just 10 minutes, if it became 1 hour, do you think like some even after
So
fixation?
doing things like tween and SDS like that, the longer you leave it on like tissue on a slide, the more likely it is the tissue just I wouldn't say it's falling apart, but it usually starts detaching from the slide and it gets messy, and the tissue starts degrading. Again, I don't know how organoids are affected by this. I don't know what your concentrations are. You say a high concentration for this, but that might have been like a super low concentration for tissue work. I don't know.
If
I don't
you
have-
use SDS,
What's that?
SDS instead of twin for the
We typically used SDS. That's what at
For
the
the
time that's
frozen
what we're
section.
using.
Frozen.
For frozen PLP
Oh.
fixed
And then
sections.
I have a hard time doing 25 micron frozen section.
That was a slightly thicker style than we would do.
But how long do you do those?
Primaries, if we did them at room temperature, were like 90 minutes to
90?
2 hours. Yeah, 90-minute primary incubation
Ah,
step.
primary, the antibody.
Was it
And then the fixation.
It was
and-
one was an hour and one was 90 minutes at room temperature. And for the I'm pulling 10-year data out of my brain here,
Yeah.
guys, so bear with me. But oftentimes what we would do is we do overnight in the cold room.
So antibody, but the fixation permeabilization.
Fixation was, we oftentimes did whole body perfusions in the left ventricle. So we would do that, and then they would sit in PLP, an extra thing of PLP for like an hour or two. Over fixation makes it brittle. The higher, especially PLP fixation, the more fixation you used, the more brittle. Like this used to drive me nuts with Elements because the old launcher for advanced research would pop up with this little launcher with pictures on it, right? And one of those pictures looked suspiciously like epididymis, which is what I studied, and it was horribly fixed because the epithelial layer had detached from the basal layer. And that's almost a classic example of overfixation. You fixed it for too long, and it's too glass-like. It's too brittle. It starts breaking, like things that are different flexations can't stick together anymore. So
So actually it depends on the sample.
yes, it can depend on the sample.
But
the size of the sample, because if we were doing kidney fixation, it would be different than if we were doing epididymal fixation versus lung fixation.
If the reason I asked this is I was following the protocol company, but even if that is protocol is for 3D organoid, but even if I do 2D monolayer organoid, I'm just using that protocol similarly, but it looks okay.
Yeah.
So, but I was wondering, fixation time, or how
I know
much-
fixation on cells is a lot shorter. I didn't do a lot of it in the lab. I didn't do a lot of cell work in the lab.
Or 3D protocol, the company protocol is 45 minutes fixation.
For 3, I would definitely decrease it. I mean, I would for a single layer. I mean, just go look at the literature and see what people do fixations at for
okay.
cells, right?
Or-
For a single layer. For 3D,
3D is more longer.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how long it takes you to generate these, how expensive they are to generate, but things that we used to do, that I used to routinely do, was test PLP concentrations and PLP fixation times. And every once in a while, we would just run the sequence to see if it was still adequate to what we were doing. Like, is 2% or whatever, 1%, whatever percentage PLP, was that still a good time, a good percentage, or was that a good amount of time? Like, are we overfixing or underfixing?
Okay, another question is, for I forgot the word, after PFA fixation, I'm doing a glycine incubation. I
Okay.
learned that I got to take out that extra PFA, and then so what is the name? I use acid by using the low pH and then incubating high temperature. I forgot I used.
Oh, for antigen retrieval?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So like a citrate, like a sodium citrate buffer with a mat. Yeah, we did that too.
So that is like, for example, if this antibody doesn't require antigen retrieval, this antibody definitely need antigen retrieval. So it doesn't matter which antibody. So, for example, sometimes I need to use both antibody to do one experiment. So for the antibody which doesn't require antigen retrieval, we don't do antigen retrieval with better. Or that's
I would
not
test it.
tested.
You have to do the controls, right? You have to be like, okay, I know sometimes I have to do this one that I have never needed to do antigen retrieval on with this one that does. You need to test what it looks like.
Okay, so
with
you
or without.
have an experience like this antibody which doesn't require antigen retrieval if you use the antigen.
I can't say that I've had specific experiences seeing it have a big effect on non-retrieval, ones that don't, but I can't say I've never tried every single antibody out there. So
Okay, so it's just
Most of the cases,
Yeah.
those actually doesn't require the antigen retrieval. They also work after the antigen retrieval as well.
Yeah.
Those that doesn't require the antigen
It works
retrieval, but the other antibody require the antigen retrieval. But the first one also after antigen retrieval we also detect. That's what I have seen. When to strain and do it.
And are you doing your primaries at the same time, or are you doing stepwise?
sometimes.
Try them stepwise.
Yeah, still.
Because typically, we almost never found multiplexing our antibodies to be effective.
But
In our
step,
lab?
step by means so
So we would do primary, secondary, primary, secondary. Some people will try to do primaries
Yeah.
and then secondaries,
Oh.
and they're gonna compete against each other. Like there's,
Oh,
there's
really?
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
the thing is
they're
that
just
time gives you a better sometimes.
especially
But they
polyclonal.
Oh.
When you can usually get away with that is monoclonals, right? Monoclonals are easier to work with in those senses
I
because
see. More specific.
they are more. You have a highly targeted range of antibodies.
So you are
Oh.
talking about antigen retrieval?
No,
Or-
Just
no,
normal
No,
staining.
just
Staining
normal
in
staining,
general.
right? Like test to you have to do your tests. You have to do your controls to see if you can do both of those primaries in the same step. Because they may stick together. They may aggregate. They may fall out. They may,
Oh. I was doing
And
two
you
or
also
three
have to
of
make
those.
sure sometimes pH can play a big factor too. So I did a lot of antibody purification too. So we'd get the leads from the rabbits or the chickens, whatever they were, and I would take them and I'd have a peptide column that I made and I would incubate it and then I would knock them all off. And you had to work very quickly because as you're knocking fractions off, you're knocking them off with pH, right? Low, high acidic pH. And if you don't neutralize that pH quickly enough as it comes out, all the antibodies will
Hmm.
and you're like, crap, it's cloudy. They all just aggregate.
So it means if I
So just make sure if you're using like a sodium citrate that your pH is still stable afterwards. Like you want to make sure that none of your other buffers are like a high acidity buffer.
after antigen retrieval with cytocitrate buffer,
We wash it.
Make sure it's washed,
Wash,
properly,
wash.
right? And then just make sure that none of your other buffers that you're using at any of your steps. Because again, I don't know your protocol. I don't know what other wash steps you have.
so if I do needed to use 3 color, so overlay, so if I did it right first primary, secondary, primary,
Yes.
secondary.
Yep.
So usually I do primary overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So it means from first staining to last staining, it could take like 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
So, but the secondary antibody fluorescence should stay nicely until last.
Yeah, I think you should. They don't. Yeah, I mean, they should be okay. I wouldn't worry about them dying that quickly. Again, take everything that I am saying with a grain of salt. I don't know your samples. I don't know your protocols. I can tell you what we did. A staining for me could take a day to 2 days. Sometimes I had like Zona Occluta 1, ZO1 staining for tight order junctions. That was a 3-day staining for me because we would have to do 100 micron thick sections. The antibody that we had was not very sensitive, so you'd have to leave it on your sample for like a while before you actually washed it off into your secondary.
So if
But you got gorgeous chicken wire tubes in our sample.
But if you use antibody fluorescence is already conjugated.
Yeah, typically.
So if let's say that is mouse monoclonal GFP 488 or something, do you use mouse serum or not?
We mostly used it. It kind of depended. We mostly blocked with BSA, bovine serum albumin. Right? That was most of it. Sometimes we had to use fish serum. That's what we did.
Fish?
Yeah, there was another company that made like a fish serum albumin kind of blocker. I think once or twice over my 8 years in the lab did I use something different than those two things, but that was 90% of what I did, 99%. Again, go back to the literature, see what people are doing.
Yeah, I use a
I
broken
usually
one.
use a donkey second serum.
Yeah.
Donkey.
I mean, it's not a bad thing to do, right? Like, you can certainly do it. Yeah. And if you're doing like an amplification technique, like TSA or something that uses a horseradish peroxidase, I would always do a hydrogen peroxide step. It should be in the protocol to do that. So.
Do you have any preference gold or donkey?
I did, depending on the very specific antibodies I was working with. Jackson Immuno Research was always my favorite for secondaries.
Some people do for example, if you need a 2 antibody, some people do one for donkey, one for gold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we would always try to use as many different species as possible.
But I'm always with donkeys.
Yeah, And then always double check because usually the spec sheets from those companies tell you what it's reactive to. So we would have to be careful and pick, because I was able to do up to like 4 primaries. But you had to be judicious with your antibody selection.
But if I do donkey and I bought antibody like Tuesday, so I shouldn't use
I mean,
that
generally
one.
speaking, we always try to avoid having the exact same species for primary,
Oh yeah, no.
for secondaries as well, too, if possible. I mean, we tried to make it as diverse as possible. It wasn't always possible,
But
but
in that case, because you use Rocky BSA doesn't matter which goat or donkey.
yeah.
So if I was using donkey serum for blocking, so but if
I mean,
do-
I don't remember doing any extra blocking. I'm trying to. I'm going back to my memory here again. Lots of brain archive digging here, but it would be like rehydrate, SDS, block in BSA, primary, wash, primary, wash, secondary, wash, primary, wash, secondary. We didn't always. I don't remember doing extra blocking steps. So. But at the same point, like I think you just need to go and also do your due diligence on the literature too, because yeah,
I
I
have
mean
a
this is,
unrelated question. So for frozen section, I tend to get to the tissue folding.
yeah, tissue likes the fold when you pick it
Yeah,
up.
and
Yeah,
do you use this heat, like a heating technique? Like I learned from my colleague's husband that they do 56 degree 30 minutes before rehydrating or something.
I never tried that,
Okay.
but I was very good at the cryostat.
Eh?
I was very good with the cryostat sectioning.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a lot of folds.
Do you have any trick to keep the tissue?
I do, but if you want to pick my brain outside of the imaging training session on that kind of
Oh, okay.
stuff, we're kind of getting further and further and further.
Yeah.
away from
Okay.
this here. So let's rein it back into what's going on here.
Okay, so this one, so I wanna do like a G stack.
Okay.
Just in case, although the staining is not good.
Right.
So it should be about 100 microliter
Okay.
or
100
something.
microns. Okay.
Probably.
So let's go ahead and take a look here. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and focus up and down. So I brought my ND acquisition out, and we're going to go in one direction. That's up.
You say usually like until I don't
Wherever
see
you
the-
wanna go. Right? I don't want to go too far past, if possible, but we can clip out. It's better to go further than to not catch everything. This is very thick.
More than 200?
I don't know yet. We're gonna find. It's just don't worry about that right now because it's wherever it was before. I'm gonna use the shift here to go a little faster. So always remember though that we only have 150 microns of working distance here, so
150.
150 microns.
I think it's a little
Depend on how much I do.
maximum.
So
Oh.
here, see, it looks like it's walking away. I think we're pushing on the cover slip.
Okay. So it means to take a nice picture, whole picture, organoid size should be less than 150.
Yes. And I'm just using the shift to go a little faster because the focusing is very fine at high mag. And the other issue is I don't know where your sample is sitting. Is it on the cover glass? Is it on top of the Matrigel? Like, because that'll affect.
This is not. This is
You,
take
but,
out from
so,
the
you,
design.
but you said you put like a little space.
I did it. So this is a slide glass. I put the spacer on it,
Yep.
and then I put the organoid here, and then put
Onto the cover slip. Or onto the slide.
under the so put the
There is a group, no, on the slide for the organoid.
You stuck the organoid to the slide,
Yeah.
and then okay, you're gonna lose working distance. That working
Yeah.
distance is gonna be relative to your cover slip.
how shall I do?
I would stick it to the cover slip if possible.
So spot on cover slip
Yeah.
and then put it.
Yep.
Okay.
Because we're gonna find out here in a second how thick this really was, and if it's less than 100, then yeah, we were reaching to get to your sample. So I would go, somewhere around there is probably fine, and that should be the bottom. 110. So absolutely, we were trying to image something when we were hitting the cover slip, and then probably pushing the slide.
Okay.
So 0.08, I'm gonna say almost should never be the step size, because that's way less than double, or way more than double the step size that's right here. So 0.274 is the oversampling amount that the software is recommending. 0.08 is way further. So when we want to do a Z-stack with Decon, maybe we want to double our Nyquist rate right here, but that would only be like a 0.1 something, right? If we're doing NSPARC, we always want to double that value. So here, 0.08 really does not get us a whole lot. So let's go to, we're gonna go even fewer than 0.274 because that's 405 steps for this. So we're gonna go with one, we'll go with 2 for now. Go with 2 micron steps, just for expedience sake. But just remember, the more slices, the longer it takes, the more likely you're gonna bleach.
So this one is machine recommended.
This
And-
is 2.3 times the axial resolution of the objective. Okay? So it's already oversampling 2.3 times. We only need to go further when we want to typically break physics. And then we go 4.6 times, typically. Alright, so I'm going to hit run. That's fine. It's going to switch me. That's absolutely fine.
Sorry, when we are running, can I ask again? So this part machine not always suggested, right?
So this, typically, without due reason, I wouldn't go smaller than that step size. But if I was going to be trying to break physics, like using the NSPARC, then that's when we will go shorter, smaller than that step size.
Okay, so that part, so I don't need to ask machine, so the machine will.
Yes,
put
this
down
will
the
update
number.
based upon the objective and based upon your
Okay.
yeah.
And then so double means if
So
I can do if I didn't worry about how many slides, that I should do double. It means 0.54.
no, so double your sampling rate, which effectively halves your step size, right? Because you want to be going 2.3 times your resolution, which is what that button gives us. That's 2.3 times our resolution. If we want to break physics, like on the NSPARC, we typically want to go twice that. We want to go 4.6 times. So we would go around a 0.1. So it's the opposite direction of what you're thinking. It's kind of weird to explain sometimes.
Yes, you know.
Yeah,
0.274.
You want more z-planes to feed to the deconvolution, because the more you have, the more it can recombine. Yeah. There we go. There is our organoid, scanned relatively nicely. And then your different rendering tools are here, so we can see it in our max IP. then we can see it in our side slice option. Or, last but not least, the 3D reconstruction. We're gonna save the best for last.
So, okay. So to show the 3D, before I click the 3D, should I click the max one?
No, I just was showing you the different options in order.
I see. Okay. And then I see.
So, obviously, our channels here, we were just a little oversaturated close to the glass. So, I would recommend when you're doing this, just double check, jump through your sample to make sure you found the brightest section. You always want to look around in XY to find your brightest area, and Z. But that looks pretty good.
Nice.
And if we look at it in our alpha shading, it'll look even better. So this is just a different rendering mode. Max IP is the one that I use the most consistently. Alpha, when you have a really nice clean confocal image, gives you a nice, more solid looking object. So you see, you can't quite see inside of it the same way you did before. So then this is our acquisition, and then here, this is where a denoise might come in really handy. Let's see what we get here.
What's the green thing?
Pulsar. I mean, maga in nuclei.
So there's our denoised. If we look at this at the max IP, it looks much more like the alpha before because we've removed all that little shot noise that was impacting it.
But I see some. This is true, I think.
Okay.
This is not true.
Yeah, lots of sticky stuff. Antibodies don't always like to behave.
Okay. Alright, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So for this sample I can stop here. And
So how to
then,
convert just go ahead and finish it.
no. I just wanted to see the live organelle. It's
Okay.
correct, so I think that's
Alright, so
So
we
I
get-
understand like how to convert this file into to save it like just a regular way.
I mean, this is just an indie acquisition, so you save the file as is. If you
Yeah.
want the movie of this, like you want an animation,
Yeah.
that's the Movie Maker tool, which I don't know why they've made this button so small over the years, but
Didn't know.
Okay.
this allows you to build
So
like,
check in 3D changer.
yeah. So you have to build a bookmark. Right.
Cool.
what
So
did
those are
you do?
presets.
You
So
just
yeah, let's remove block.
Yeah.
We have a lot going on. So
So once you create the movie, then you have to save it like just like
we would turn it into a.
this one.
Yep. We're gonna export it.
Oh,
It's
yes.
software is hanging a little. I think that all the files we have open. And there we go. I was kind of afraid that would happen. We were just trying to do too many things with the 3D.
Because it's too heavy.
Yeah, the 3D files can get pretty big. So